in the morning on AM 1160, FM 101.1. Marshall Chriswell is here. Another installment of Martial Law. This radio program intended to be for informational purposes only. The information does not constitute legal advice. The law constantly changes. The information may not be complete or correct depending on the date and your particular legal problem. Each legal problem depends on its individual facts, and different jurisdictions have different laws and regulations. Because of those differences, you should not act or rely on any information in this segment without seeking the advice of a competent attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction for your particular problem. You probably get all excited when you hear that disclaimer. That's legal talk.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe excited isn't the word
I don't know about excited, but yeah, it's familiar anyway.
Well, good morning. It's the springtime of the year, and people's thoughts turn to baseball, apple pies, and real estate. Maybe not in that order, but people do begin to think about real estate this year, whether it's right to acquire some or the right time to acquire some, or whether they want to maybe put something up on the market. And so we're going to see in the course of the coming weeks, I'm sure, and months, some real estate signs popping up on lines, and there are certain things that attorneys have to be involved in when it comes to real estate law, isn't there?
That's correct, and we're already seeing those signs at my office. I know that we're getting more calls regarding real estate in the last few weeks, and people that are putting houses under contract are starting to think about selling the house that they're in, and getting their ducks in a row to do that. So it's a good time of year for folks that are in the real estate business, and as you said, attorneys are an integral part of any real estate transaction. I know at my office we are full service. We offer full service real estate services. I mean, we do everything from representing buyers and sellers through from drafting the initial agreements of sale, negotiating the price, negotiating the contingencies, the inspections, things like that, guiding buyers and sellers through the process before closing, conducting title searches, ensuring that buyers are getting good title to the real estate that they're purchasing, and right through the closing and making sure that the closing goes smoothly, conducting closings at our office and ensuring all of the deeds and other documents that are necessary to memorialize the transaction are recorded, so from start to finish we can take care of you.
Well, that's the thing. I would imagine that most people who enter into the real estate market one way or the other aren't really aware of all of the issues and all of the different things that have to be done in order to sell a piece of ground or to buy a piece of ground. And the attorney would be a good place to start. Do they need to bring a checklist, or are you going to help them with that?
We're going to help them with that. I think that a good first step, if you're thinking of buying or selling real estate, is to talk to an attorney. If you're going to use the services of a real estate agent, that's important too. But talking to the attorney first, particularly if you're selling property by owner, or if you're purchasing property and you don't have a real estate agent, make sure to have an attorney. Start drafting or reviewing documents. As you kind of alluded to, these transactions are more complicated than people think. Just because they happen all the time doesn't mean that they're not complicated. And I think every year there are more regulations, more rules. Banks are putting in more policies and procedures that you really need to have a professional that deals with these transactions on a day-to-day basis to walk you through it, or something can get missed. You're going to hit some kind of a speed bump along the way, and you thought you were going to close and move into your new house on April 15th or April 30th, but instead we're looking at May or June because we had problems with paperwork or whatnot.
There are many, many different types of issues that I'm sure you have to deal with. We talked a couple of years ago, maybe only a year or so ago, about when dealing with real estate, a new set of regulations that come in having to do with power of attorney, and a paper having been signed under the old rules of power of attorney, and whether that is still valid according to Pennsylvania law. Those types of things, those types of changes in law, and as we say in the disclaimer, the law constantly changes. It seems like in real estate law, that's really the case.
It is. Just a couple, maybe 2 to 3 years ago now, we dealt with, real estate professionals dealt with an entire new regime of regulations that came in at the federal level, which affected every aspect of a real estate closing. So if you don't have an attorney that deals with these types of transactions all the time, that there could be things that get missed, things that are overlooked or just not done properly, and they can cause problems. Like I said, in the schedule for closing, and down the road as well.
All right. So some of the issues that have to be dealt with immediately, and right away as soon as they walk into the office. Okay, these are things that are the primary steps that are involved in acquiring or in selling a piece of property. The title search is one thing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the first thing is you've got to have a sales agreement in place. And that's something that often gets overlooked. You have folks that don't have realtors involved. Somebody calls and says, okay, I'm buying a house, and we need to set a closing date and start doing those things. But they've forgotten to put a sales agreement in place. They just had an oral agreement, just a handshake, and the law says that's not good enough to make it a binding obligation on either party to buy or sell. So first thing is we need to make sure you have a written sales agreement in place. We need to make sure that the price that's negotiated was fair from the perspective of the party that I'm representing, and then make sure that if you're going to purchase the property, if property is being purchased as is, then we need to specifically make sure that that's part of the agreement. But more often than not, I'm going to be recommending inspections. Whether it's a home inspection, sewage, radon inspection. Make sure that there's a mortgage contingency so that if the buyer can't get financing, there's a way for them to back out without losing money. All those kinds of things are so important just from the outset that often people kind of forget about all that and just say, okay, well, we're gonna buy or we're gonna sell, and let's get it done. But getting that sales agreement in place is really important. And then, like you said, the next step is a title search.
Yeah. One of the things that I know that you have cautioned people strongly about is, and it's more common now, I think, than ever before, the rent-to-own agreement. You have been very, very urgent in the past to let people know that you have to really, really walk a tight line on that.
Absolutely, and you're right. We're seeing it more and more that buyers are having trouble qualifying for financing. And so sellers maybe have had their property on the market for quite a while, because we've kind of been in a tough market around here for a few years. And so when those events the confluence of those events, people say, okay, well, can I just rent this property until I can get the financing to buy it outright from a traditional bank? And when you're doing that as a seller, essentially you're becoming the bank. Okay, you're making the loan. You're charging a particular amount of interest and hoping to get that monthly payment, and then the principal that's being paid will go towards the purchase price. But as a seller, it's incredibly risky. You're risking somebody else occupying the property as essentially a tenant. And you're hoping to sell it, so you want to keep it in a good condition. But also, what happens if this agreement falls through? And so not only do you have to, if you have problems regaining possession of the property, okay, you have to, a lot of times you can't treat it as an eviction. Like a regular landlord-tenant relationship, you actually have to foreclose, because the courts have said that if someone is paying a portion of the purchase price every month, that they own an equitable interest in that property because they've paid towards it. So you actually have to go through a whole foreclosure process as if you were a bank, which can be very expensive. And then on top of that, you're back to square one, putting the property on the market again.
Yeah.
So it's not a great situation. I've done them. That there are some, particularly if they're short term, and the seller has done their homework or has a personal relationship already with the buyer. and it's a real short-term deal. I've seen them work out, but if you're looking at a period of, okay, it's going to be a 3-year, 5-year rent-to-own, there is a very good chance that isn't not going to work out, and it's going to lead to some kind of a dispute.
That's a very complicated transaction there. Most people, we hope, won't get themselves too entangled in the complicated scenarios such as that. However, no matter what the scenario, when you're doing real estate, an attorney's the best first step. What do you say to them to get them into the selling mode or into the buying mode? What are the things that they need to know in that first consultation with you?
Particularly from a buyer's perspective, I want them to understand how important it is that we conduct a full title search on the property. A lot of times buyers will come in and they'll say, well, I'm familiar with the owner. I knew their family and there can't be any problems. Or, oh, it's only had 2 owners in the past 30 years, so there can't be any problems. And that's just not true. I run into problems with title defects in the chain of title, old mortgages that were out there that were maybe paid, but the bank has never issued a satisfaction for, that are still operating as a lien, stuff that you just wouldn't know about. Judgments. Somebody maybe had a criminal charge, didn't pay their fines. That can operate as a lien on real estate. Back child support, things that you just wouldn't even think about that are going to be turned up by an attorney doing a full title search. And when you're talking about trying to save a few bucks here and there by buying property without a title search or skimping in other areas, it's just not worth it when you consider what's going to happen when you want to sell that property later on. All of those issues are going to pop up at that time. So that's something that I really try to impress upon folks that are buying.
And of course, there are disclosures about problems with the properties that must be made. All kinds of. I think we need to visit this topic again.
Well, it's that time of year, and maybe next week we could continue the discussion.
Yeah, Marshall Chriswell, thanks so much. Meanwhile,
thanks a lot.
Folks want to know about what they need to do to get in touch with you and start this process. What need they to do?
You can visit our office in the Atrium Building here in downtown Indiana. Call us at 465-5826 or go online to www.westernpalawyer.com.
He is Marshall Chriswell. The segment is called Marshall Law, and like I said, this seems like a topic that we're going to have to expand on a little bit next time.